Pro-life leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate have sent 3 recent letters to the Trump administration, urging the administration to maintain pro-life protections during the search for the treatments and cures for COVID-19. 2 letters were sent to President Donald Trump calling for a continued enforcement on his fetal tissue regulations. And the 3rd letter from pro-life lawmakers was sent to the FDA, urging the FDA to uphold and enforce the risk evaluation and mitigation strategy associated with chemical abortions. The letter on the fetal tissue ban was signed by 35 senators and refutes a request by 15 pro-abortion state attorney generals who are requesting waivers to the ban on fetal tissue for coronavirus research. The letter states in part, quote, "The facts show that aborted fetal tissue from ongoing abortions has never been used in the production of a single vaccine, and most vaccines today use more efficient, modern cell lines and production techniques. Notably, the few attempted transplants of aborted fetal tissue have made most patients worse, not better." As mentioned, that specific letter was signed by 35 pro-life senators, including Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who joins us now via Skype. Senator, thanks for being here. In addition to being a signee of this letter, you are also a medical doctor. What is your perspective on this push for the use of tissue from aborted babies in COVID-19 research?
The first perspective has to be one of life. We must value life and have an ethic of life. Now, if you will, there's a certain irony. Those who advocate using aborted fetal tissue propose that this is the only way to preserve life from COVID-19, the ravages, if you will. On the other hand, you can get to the same end of finding those cures to prevent COVID-19 without sacrificing the most basic fundamental, which is that we should value life. There's an irony in their position. They're willing to sacrifice life on a pretense that we need to do so to save life. We who are pro-life would say, no, we value life, and we can save lives from COVID-19 without devaluing the life of the unborn.
That being said, Senator, to Americans who think the cure to COVID-19 might come from aborted fetal tissue research, what do you want to clarify to them?
You know, there are ways to get to the same end without using aborted tissue. It has been clearly established that stem cells can be formed, if you will, when we're born, there's cells that can go any direction. And they may end up as a piece of bone, as a piece of liver, as a piece of brain. They are called pluripotent. They can go in any direction whatsoever. You can get those kind of stem cells to evolve, if you will, into the specialized tissue that you need for different medical scientific purposes. And you don't have to get those from aborted children. So there's other sources of this tissue, aside from what I just described, that can replace the need to take tissue from aborted fetuses.
We all want to see a cure for COVID-19. That's not even a question. But can you speak to how we can't allow this high-stakes time to compromise our values?
Well, clearly people will use any excuse to advance an agenda, whether it is valid or not. And if we're speaking of a cure, of course, we're speaking most likely of a medication. And those medications will not come from aborted fetal tissue. It'll come from knowing the virology of the virus and how we're going to interrupt it, just as we've done with HIV, hepatitis B, and other viruses, and how to stimulate the antibodies that would then block the virus from entering our cells. We can do that without aborted tissue, and that would both preserve our culture of life and respect life, both in terms of the people who we protect from COVID-19, but also the means by which we achieve that protection.
As I mentioned, you are a signee of this letter to the Trump administration on upholding these pro-life protections. Senator, can you lay out the kind of pro-life protections that can be ensured in coronavirus research?
Well, this sort of thing, this ban, if you will, of using tissue from aborted fetuses is a key portion of that. But then after that, I think we have to say we are pro-life. We are all about saving lives. And so we want to prevent the aborted fetus from, if you will, there being an incentive to abort. beyond that which currently exist, but also then put in those systems which would, whatever cures we get, deliver those cures as quickly and as affordably, even for free, to those who would otherwise protect. It always makes our case a little bit more when we both protect the life of the unborn, but we also defend the life of those who are born, if you will. So the folks who advocate for using fetal tissue say, this is necessary to save lives of those who are already born. We would say, no, we can respect the life of the unborn, but we can still deliver life-saving vaccines and cures to those who are walking on the streets. We need to also emphasize that to give credibility for our defense of the unborn.
What is your message to the Trump administration on this right now?
Respect life. Respect life for those who are in the womb. Respect life for those who have left the womb. And I think the Trump administration is attempting to do that.
And finally, do you have any last words you want to share to your constituents and to our viewers right now in the midst of this pandemic?
Yeah, first, I thank your viewers for respecting so much about the issue of life. It is your steadfastness that has just kept this the culture, the conscience of the culture awakened as to why this is an issue. I thank you so much for doing so. You influence. Please continue that influence.
Well, thank you so much for your pro-life leadership and for joining us on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, thank you and stay safe.
You too. Thank you.
We're going to stay on this topic with our next guest. Autumn Christensen is the policy director of the Susan B. Anthony List, and she joins us via Skype. Autumn, we've seen pro-life members in Congress send 3 recent letters to the Trump administration about maintaining pro-life protections during the coronavirus pandemic. Why is this necessary in the first place?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. You know, this old adage that we should never allow a crisis go to waste, well, that's exactly what the abortion industry is looking to do, to exploit this corona crisis and compound it with an abortion crisis. One way that they're trying to do that is that they're calling for taxpayer funding for research involving human fetal tissue. Another way is that they want to lift safeguards designed to protect women from the dangerous aspects of chemical abortion. And as that pressure builds, it is just so encouraging to see so many members of Congress rally behind legislation and also sending a letter to the president that says that they support these common sense protections for women and also the prohibition on taxpayer funding for human fetal tissue research.
Autumn, what misconceptions do you want to clear up when it comes to aborted fetal tissue and finding a COVID-19 cure?
It's a great question. So a year ago, this administration, a little less than a year ago, this administration issued a policy that they would no longer fund human fetal tissue research at the NIH and curtail other funding streams for research that involves the aborted baby parts, body parts of unborn children. And of course, there are those in the scientific world and those in the abortion lobby who want to see that funding flow. And so they have made some pretty wild claims about fetal tissue research, claiming that it's necessary. The reality is that the many promising studies out there to treat COVID-19, none use human fetal tissue. And even with vaccines, while some use a very old cell line that was derived using human fetal tissue decades ago, there are much better and newer ways to grow human vaccines that do not involve human fetal tissue. So, you know, they're looking to use this as a chance to expand human fetal tissue research funding, but the fact is that it's not only unethical, but also unnecessary.
Autumn, we saw a bicameral letter sent to the FDA about maintaining restrictions on the abortion pill or chemical abortions. We're going to delve into the dangers of chemical abortions a bit later in the show, but Autumn, what should pro-lifers know about pressure being put on the FDA right now concerning abortion pills?
So the FDA currently has policies in place that are designed to protect women. A woman who undergoes a chemical abortion could have severe hemorrhaging. She could have severe adverse effects if she has a ectopic pregnancy, which is a pregnancy that's implanted outside of the womb and can be very dangerous. So the current policy is that physicians or other healthcare providers who prescribe a chemical abortion have to be the ones to dispense it. And what this does is it ensures that that woman has a relationship with a healthcare provider and prevents mail order abortion. Of course, the abortion lobby would love to mail abortion pills to women across the country who would then be left to suffer an abortion alone at home, and it would turn every post office into an abortion center. Currently, that's not allowed under FDA regulations, and it's just very important for the administration to maintain those safeguards, and we're so glad to see members of Congress standing behind the FDA and encouraging them to retain these necessary safeguards.
Absolutely. Thank you for all of that insight and for reminding us, the pro-life movement, to be on high guard right now during this pandemic. Autumn Christensen, Policy Director for the Susan B. Anthony List, thank you.